You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hi, this is Katie from Queen's Podcast. Just a heads up, our show does include some strong language. So if you're uncomfortable with that, this might not be the show for you. Cheers, bitches! Hi, this is Katie.
And this is Nathan.
And you're listening to Queen's Podcast, the show about badass women in history. Hey, Nathan.
What up, Katie?
Episode 2 of 2019.
And it's a doozy.
Oh my god. Yeah, so we're finishing up the life story of Mary Queen of Scots. And as I mentioned on Mary Queen of Scots Part 1, I was doing dry January. But just researching the last part of her life has led me to drink. So I brought some Merlot that I'm going to open up halfway through.
Okay.
Yes,
so you're
halfway
gonna
through.
it's your halftime.
Yeah. Nathan, what are you drinking?
So I'm drinking a rosé, like a sparkling rosé, because red. Mm-hmm. I also have a side of Big Red.
Because she was redheaded and very tall?
And very tall. And spoiler alert, the last day that she was alive, she wore red.
Yes. You're not mixing them, are you?
No, I don't think that would be good. I mean, I can try.
No. Maybe towards the end.
You know I'm always down for
maybe
just something
maybe
crazy.
Towards the end we can make ourselves a little cocktail.
Big Red and rosé. Oh, that sounds fabulous.
One of our Twitter followers the other day made the drink from the Mary Queen of Scots Part 1.
Oh god, gasoline.
And he said it tasted like medicine. So this one will be a lot easier for him to make if he wants to.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Anyway, so let's jump in. First, let's start with shout outs. Hoo-hoo!
Yeah, so shout out to Genevieve, Angelica, Brianna. So now we have 2 Anastasias. So I'm going to say Anastasia and Anastasia.
Yeah.
So.
And whichever one you want, Anastasia or Anastasia, you claim that one.
So the Anastasia and Anastasia, Brendan, Charity, Courtney, Anita, Heather, Her Royal Highness, Jackie, Jared, Kelly, Cara, Kristen, Lizzie, Maureen, Megan, Sarah, Kate, Taylor, Tiffany, and Yen.
And those were our Empress supporters from Patreon. Shout out to our Queen Consort supporters from Patreon. Alexis, Amanda, Anna, Claire, Danny, Aaron, Eleanor, Haley, Helene, Jaime, Nicolette, Jamie, Yara, Jessica B, and Jessica M, Jose, Kat, La Michelle, Megan, Melissa, Stephanie, Taylor, Terry, and Queen Toby.
And if we ever say your name wrong, just let us know.
Just let us know. And you're paying us to give you shout outs, so please tell us if we're saying it
Tell
wrong.
us we're wrong.
Anyway, so let's just do a quick recap of where we left off. Sweet baby Mary, she was Queen of Scotland since she was 6 days old, and then she was shipped off to France to run away from crazy King Henry VIII of England. She's then married the heir to France at age 15.
And then she then becomes the Queen of France the next year until her poor baby husband dies of a horrible fucking ear infection. And then she's shipped right on back to Scotland.
People didn't know if they were going to like the teenage queen because she's Catholic and pretty much French, but it was fine. Yeah. Everybody seemed to like her. She wasn't imposing her religion on anybody. Everything's going great so far.
She does have one major rival throughout all of this, and it's John Knox. This guy is
John Knox can suck my dick.
Yes!
This guy fucking sucks. Like,
yeah,
not only is he completely, like, no religious tolerance whatsoever, but, you know, it was the 1500s. My God, his misogyny.
Yeah, the whole thing is that she's being accepting with this whole Catholic Protestant thing, and then he's gonna step in and be like, "No, I'm gonna fuck it all up."
And he's just a shit starter.
Yeah,
so,
he really is.
John Knox is the leader of the Presbyterian Church in Scotland. Mary comes, and like we said, she's Catholic. She's not pushing her Catholicism on
No.
her people because she knows most of them are Protestant, but it gets around that she takes Mass. Which,
Because she's Catholic.
of course she takes Mass. And he's just, like, telling everybody, because he does, like, these sermons and stuff, he's just telling everybody, like, she is acting like she's not gonna make you all convert, but she is. Like, this English ambassador wrote back to England just being like, whatever he says goes. If he says, be afraid of this Catholic queen, people are gonna be
They
afraid.
listen. Yeah, exactly.
And so he's telling everybody that Scotland is going to feel God's wrath if we have a Catholic queen.
And I think it's not only the Catholic thing, but I think he just hates that she has a vagina.
Yes, no, he does not trust anything with a vagina. He had said previously about Mary Tudor and Mary of Guise that it was unnatural for women to rule.
What the fuck?
And he wrote this book called The First Blast, back when Mary of Guise was regent in Scotland. And it just basically was like, it's against God for a woman to rule over men. And he just blames all of Scotland and England's problems on the abominable empire of wicked women.
It's so fucked up because, number one, how did we get here? Oh, a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
Like,
Like, okay, England and Scotland have been warring since the beginning of time. They've always had men in control. So it's like, why are you now blaming on women? Like, the men have been running it since the dawn of time, and they've always been fighting.
you know why?
It's so frustrating.
Because a bag of dicks, a bag of dicks.
John Knox is a bag of dicks. Yeah, so anyway, fuck that guy.
So Mary, like, one day is like, hey, John, I know you're talking some shit.
Mm-hmm.
Come on over and let's hash this out.
Yeah, she's thinking, I'm just going to sit down and talk to him, and we're going to square out our differences.
Yeah.
No.
That is not how
That is not what happens. This guy is just not here to make friends with her at all. And so she's basically like, dude, what the actual fuck? Because, like, after he had told, like, his sermon, like, we've got a Catholic queen and she's the devil, like, some of her servants got, like, ambushed, like, after coming out of Mass. And so she's like, dude, you're basically inciting riots. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't cool. Like,
calling me the devil, actually, people are getting hurt over this.
and he's like, I never explicitly told them to attack you. I can't help how they interpret what I say.
What a douche.
And then he was like, look, if people decide to keep you on the throne, that's their choice. I won't do anything about it. Besides, Paul the Apostle had to live under Nero, so...
That is a bitch statement.
If y'all don't know
like,
who Nero is, it's not a compliment to be compared to Nero. Just take that away from it.
So
She's
now,
like, whatever.
Yeah, she's like, fuck you, dude.
I've got other shit to do.
Yeah, and one of those things that she has to do is start making some babies and start her dynasty.
So
she
but first
says-
she wants to focus on England. Like,
Yeah.
I can be queen of both Scotland and England if I play my cards right. It's looking more and more possible like Elizabeth of England is never going to have an heir herself.
I mean, she's basically declaring that she's kind of like, yeah, I'm not really gonna
Yeah, not
I'm not
into
gonna have a
that.
husband anytime soon. So she's not gonna have a successor. And so
Yeah.
Mary obviously has the strongest claim to the throne.
Elizabeth was basically like, okay, I think you'd be a great option for heir, but I'm just not ready to name one yet. Like, a lot of people still believed Mary would have been the legitimate heir because a lot of people saw Elizabeth as illegitimate because her parents were... the legitimacy of her parents' marriage was shaky. Go back and listen to the Anne Boleyn episodes.
AKA her mom's head got chopped off.
Yes, and, like, a lot of people viewed her as a bastard.
Yes.
So if she would have named Mary her heir, people could have brought all these uprisings in Mary's name.
Yeah.
So she was just like, it's too dangerous for me to name you heir. I like you. I think you're a smart girl. I'm going to try to forget that shit you pulled back in France.
Yeah, that was still on her mind.
And so Elizabeth's like, well, she's looking for a husband. Hey, I'll name you heir if you marry an Englishman.
Makes sense.
And so Mary's like, all right, who did you have in mind?
See, I think Elizabeth is trying to be like, hey, maybe we can have somebody that could persuade her a little bit.
Oh,
maybe
no, she wants to rule her completely.
Yeah, somebody that I can eavesdrop and use them to find out what she's planning and things like that. So...
like, sends over a letter suggesting this guy named Robert Dudley. If you don't know anything, because we haven't covered Elizabeth yet, so if you don't know anything about Elizabeth, this Robert Dudley guy was almost definitely her lover. And if not her lover, he was her favorite and, like, probably the love of her life. It was a very poorly kept secret. Mary would have been like, excuse me, you're sending over your concubine?
Yeah, like, thanks, but no thanks.
Robert Dudley was not happy about this proposal. He didn't want to leave England. He didn't want to leave Elizabeth. Maybe he loved her too. Maybe he loved his status and his houses and his horses in England and stuff.
I mean, I wouldn't blame him.
Yeah, but Mary was like, one, Robert Dudley was the son of a traitor. Robert Dudley's dad had gotten his head cut off.
Yeah.
So, not really marriage material. Two, he didn't have any inherited titles. Like, Elizabeth had brought Dudley up to being an earl. Like, the ink was not even dry on the paperwork that had made him an earl. So she was like, okay, he's super below me. And three, Mary's like, you're going to send me your sloppy seconds? So nobody involved was really jazzed about this plan.
And then
whatsoever.
Mary had an idea of who she wanted to marry, and that was a dude from Spain who's like super fucking Catholic, Don Carlos. Mm-hmm. And
that's who Mary, because like an alliance with Spain would have been, because an alliance with France was kind of out the door because she's already married one of them. She can't marry one of his brothers. Yeah. And so an alliance with Spain, oh, well, that's a super powerful, rich country that's Catholic.
And that sounds great.
That sounds great. The Spanish king wasn't into it. Mm-mm. But you know what? At the end of the day, she really dodged a bullet there, because that guy, Don Carlos, was loco.
El loco la cabala.
Oh my god. That dude was insane.
Loco and la cabeza.
Like, there is one story about, like, walking around or, like, out hunting or something with his crew, and somebody that, like, was in a country house or whatever, like, dumped water out of their window, and some, like, ricocheted off the ground and, like, got on him. Mm-hmm. So he had the house set on fire. Diva!
Like, seriously, it's like, I got some water on my coat.
Burn this bitch to the ground.
Dracarys. Good lord.
Enter Lord Darnley.
Oh, and he probably liked to make an entrance.
Oh, I bet you would make such an entrance.
So, Henry Stuart, a.k.a. Lord Darnley, was the son of the Earl of Lennox. The Earl of Lennox had a really strong claim to the Scottish throne, so it was theoretically a good match.
And his wife was the daughter of Margaret Tudor. Margaret Tudor is also Mary's grandmother, too. So they have the same grandmother, but different grandfathers. So they are first half cousins.
That's a thing?
I don't know. It's totally not confusing or disgusting at all.
I mean,
I don't fucking know. I guess it's about the equivalent of being your second cousin.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's fucking confusing.
Getting caught up in semantics here. Either way, Lord Darnley on both sides of the family had a good claim to both the Scottish and the English throne.
And the Lennox family was, like, super fucking Catholic, too.
And they were pro-French. But due to, like, a really long and confusing power struggle that had been going on for a couple of generations, the Lennox family had moved to England. So they had been English subjects. So technically, Lord Darnley is an English gentleman. So Lord Darnley, let's talk about this guy.
He's an Englishman, which is exactly what Elizabeth was asking.
That's what Elizabeth said.
It's like, hey.
She didn't say which Englishman. Henry and Mary were raised in a very similar fashion. They would have had very similar types of education, really good education.
And he was tall, so he's like eye level with her. He's one of the few people.
6'3", 6'4", and she's like 6 foot. And she's not used to meeting anybody that's taller than her.
No.
So she's just like, oh, hello.
Yeah, and there she's even quoted saying that he is the best proportioned long man that she had seen.
Oh, sexy.
He's a long man.
The long man. He had a reputation in England of being spoiled and arrogant.
Yeah.
And just a bit of a brat.
Yeah, he was a brat, and there were also rumors that he may be a homo.
Yeah.
He liked pink and brown starfish.
Gross. What the fuck did you just say?
I don't know, Katie. I don't know. Anyway.
He probably had syphilis. That was like the rumor.
Yeah.
I mean, he was tall. He was so tall and
He was
handsome.
a long man.
He was a long man, and that is all that Mary... He's English. He's Catholic. He's taller than me. He's handsome. He's pro-French. He's from a noble family. He's the son of an earl. Tick, 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 ticked all these boxes.
And then whenever they met in February 1565, they fucking hit it off, too.
Yeah.
So their personalities meshed, too. So
Yeah.
it was like, she didn't meet him, and he was like this complete fucking dud.
Yeah.
Like, they got along.
Yeah, and no one in her privy council, any of her advisors or anything, they didn't really like him, and they weren't crazy about her marrying a Catholic. She was sort of like, la la la, do what I want. They knew his reputation from England, and I'm sure somebody tried to tell her, and she just was like, well, you are going to say that about any Catholic that I marry. Y'all are gonna, she's like, I'm gonna marry a Catholic, y'all just need to lean into it. And they're like, no, but he's horrible. Like, we're hearing that he's just a jackass, and she's just like, jealous much?
Right.
Yeah.
And Queen Elizabeth doesn't like him either. I mean...
Well, she doesn't like the idea because now Mary's going to have double claim to the the English throne.
He's a threat.
Yeah.
Like, marrying him would be a threat.
Yeah, and so Elizabeth was like, okay, I said an Englishman, but not this one. And Mary's sort of like, all right, you're just being too picky now. Like,
yeah, like, I did what you said, and
Yeah.
now you're saying no. What the fuck?
So they get married in a small ceremony at Holyrood Castle in July 1565, just 5 months after meeting. She didn't wait for papal dispensation, which is like where the Pope says, yeah, you're cousins, but I'm gonna let it slide.
I'm gonna let it slide because I'm the Pope.
I'm the Pope. I like you. I let it slide. And she didn't wait for that. Maybe she thought if, because those usually took a few months to come in, maybe she thought somebody would try to get them out of the way.
And maybe also it's just so common to get them approved whenever you're that high up and that much money that she was like, it's going to happen anyway,
Yeah.
so whatever. But she ended up pulling like a Cleopatra and having like the coins minted with each other, like the faces of each other, and so she ended up having coins made with both of them on it.
Mm-hmm. And she promises him the crown matrimonial, which basically means like he's her equal, he's king, and if she dies, he keeps to keep being king in his own name.
Mm-hmm. If somebody wants some power,
yeah, he is not trying to be an inactive partner in this.
Well,
he is very much trying to be king. He also starts kind of courting Spain and France and being like, telling their ambassadors and stuff like, look, we're gonna get Scotland back to being a Catholic country. We're gonna bring mass back to Scotland, because he's trying to make these connections with these powerful, rich European countries. But unsurprisingly, this pisses off Mary's entire Privy Council.
well, I mean, most of them are Protestant.
Most of them are Protestants, and even the ones that aren't Protestants are trying to keep peace in their fucking country.
Her half brother is totally not cool with this because
Not
I mean
at
he's
all.
been running a Protestant country while she was gone.
And so it's funny you should mention her half brother James, the Earl of Moray. He was like, nope. This is
ma'am,
not
no
going to
ham.
stand. And he starts a rebellion.
Oh, thanks, bro.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. So he starts this rebellion, and it's called the Chaseabout Rebellion, which is an adorable fucking name. Chaseabout. Watch out, I'm going to get you.
Uh-oh.
You're it.
Uh-oh, tag.
Chase me.
Come and get me.
So half-brother James starts, like, getting together all these Protestant lords and decides that they're going to overthrow Mary because she's made bad decisions.
Yeah.
She's going to, like, shit's going to hit the fan if they don't step in.
Not all of the Protestant lords hopped on board, though.
No, a lot of them...
I think some of them may have been scared.
And I think a lot of them were like, well, nothing's happened yet.
Yeah, she hasn't done anything.
Why put myself in the line of danger and go to battle if nothing's happened yet? And this one guy called the Lord Bothwell he is in one of, like, the 12 top advisors in her privy council. And he's like, no, we can't turn on our queen. And he is able to muster, like, all these troops for her. So keep his name in mind.
Yeah.
He might be important later.
Commit to memory.
Yes.
Mary's troops were severely outnumbered her brothers. Like, she was going to whoop his ass.
No. In every way, shape, or form, she had the money, she had the power, she had more men.
She sold off her jewels, honey.
Oh, yeah. She was, like, selling off her jewels from France to, like...
Bitch, I'd be like, no, not that necklace.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sell off...
She didn't sell all her jewels.
Just the ones she didn't like so much.
Just the ones that she was like, I can part with these. So it's called the Chase About Rebellion because there were never actually any battles. Chase them, like, they'd be like, oh, we're going to go over here and try to raise troops. And so Mary's troops then would follow them there. And then they'd be like, oh, fuck, there they are again. So they'd run again. And it never actually came to, like, a head. They never actually fought.
It was just like an intimidation thing.
Yeah. Finally, the rebel leaders, and a name, like, specifically the Earl of Moray, her brother James, retreats to England. He's just like, well, fuck this. I'm going to England.
Right. So James met with Elizabeth and asked for help with the rebellion and was like, hey, do you really think you can help me out?
Could you give me some troops?
We need some help.
And Elizabeth was just sort of like, I'm not trying to start a war with Mary.
And Scotland at all? Like, that's not a good idea.
She's like, she writes to Mary being like, I hope you can forgive your brother, which I think was just her nice way of being like, can you get your hood rat relatives out of London?
Yeah. Can you tell them to stop talking to me? Like,
Mary did forgive the lords that came and asked for forgiveness. James was not one of them. He stayed in northern England for the next year or so.
Yeah, he was scared.
The Chase About Rebellion's done, and Mary's popularity wasn't really hurt by it.
No, I think the people around her and the townsfolk and everybody still loved her. Like, they were like, okay, well, some bitches tried to take your crown. I wouldn't blame you for going after him.
Though a lot of people are starting to really not love her husband.
Well, he's like over the top, alcoholic, causing drama.
Arrogant. Yes, and he's causing drama all the time. Just being a dick.
Yeah.
He's just a brat and an entitled dick.
And he's acting like he's the king of Scotland, and it's like, no, bitch, you're just the queen's husband.
She tried to secretly recall those coins that had his name on it.
Ah, like drama.
Like, she tried to be like, because she had promised him the crown matrimonial, but hasn't signed any papers. And, like, after, like, a month or two, she's like, oh no, let's make sure this guy doesn't actually have any real power. He's just, like, stewing over that all the time.
Getting wasted,
being mean,
being obnoxious.
Yeah, every day. And, like, no one can stand him anymore. And he's complaining to Mary, being like, you don't come to my bed as often as you should. Like,
ooh,
where
slam.
Are you spending your nights?
So she ain't getting that. They ain't getting that D from.
I mean, she is, because she's pregnant. Like,
what?
So it's October 1565. So they've only been married a few months, and already they've gone to war. They've grown distant. And they've gotten pregnant.
I know, it's like, dude complains that they're not sleeping enough with each other, and then she's pregnant after like 2 or 3 months after being married. It's like, wait, so shut up.
They've got a weird relationship.
And this is a huge threat to Elizabeth, because now Mary has an heir that's on the way.
Coming, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big thing.
Darnley is jealous how popular his wife is and how unpopular he is.
They're just weird together. Like,
I know.
This whole thing is like a weird soap opera.
I know. So the rumors start flying that
she's
Mary
cheating on me.
Mary is
she's
sleeping with her private secretary, this guy named David Rizzio.
So wait. Who is David Rizzio?
David Rizzio, like, we really haven't talked about him much yet, but he is Mary's private secretary. He came to Scotland as a court musician. He was born in Italy. He was a court musician for the Duke of Savoy, and whenever they came over on, like, a royal visit or whatever, Mary was like, I like your style, I like the way you play. He was also super Catholic. They had a lot in common, and she was like, I want you to stay here and be a court musician here in Scotland.
Yes. And so she really took him in and put her under their wing, and they really clicked together.
Yeah.
And he ended up moving up pretty quickly with her. So I think that's really what raised red flags with a lot of people. They were like, how is he being elevated?
Yeah, he went from being court musician to private secretary to the Queen.
Yeah, like, where did that come from?
I think it was just really, they had a lot in common. She trusted him. Sometimes you just click with people. And
right?
you feel like you can trust them right away. I don't think she was sleeping with David Rizzio. Most portrayals of him is that he's gay. Mm-hmm. And there's rumors that Darnley and him
were together.
I don't know how much you should believe those rumors, because like we said,
there was so much drama with the Protestants trying to make up rumors about Mary.
And just everybody fucking hated Darnley. Yeah. So it's quite possible that they're just like, what's the worst thing we can say about him? Oh, he's sleeping with.
And that's why Rizzio is moved up as private secretary, because he's sleeping with Darnley.
Yeah. So, people were suspicious. They're like, he's always with her, which he's the private secretary. Of course he's
with her. That's what he does.
But yeah, everyone said that they were sleeping together. When Darnley was plotting to take the country back to Catholicism, he had confided in Rizzio too. So he must have just been like a guy that you thought you could trust.
Yeah, somebody that you could talk to and say, so what would you do if you were me?
Exactly.
Somebody that you could confide in and be honest with. And the Scottish lords fucking hated his ass.
Well, they said that they thought because he was from Italy. And so, of course, he must be a spy for the Pope.
I'm a Pope. I send you a spy.
He'd be a musician.
No. So the Scottish lords decide he's a spy. So guess what spies gotta do? They gotta die.
Yeah, they're like, so we're gonna kill him. And you know what? No wonder everybody in Europe thought Scotland was just like this crazy wasteland of like no man's land, wild, wild west.
Yeah.
The lords are all just fucking
killing each other.
People.
Yeah.
All right, and so that is where I opened my first little mini bottle of wine.
It's so classy, Katie. I'm so proud of you.
This is where shit just gets bananas.
Hits the fan. So, the Scottish lords eventually convince Darnley that Rizzio is sleeping with Mary.
They're like,
and they're like,
can you even be sure the baby's yours that she's pregnant with?
Everybody knows that they've been fucking each other, and I'm pretty sure Rizzio's the daddy.
You said it yourself. She never comes to your bed, so
let's go on Maury and have a paternity
test.
Pregnant?
If Rizzio wasn't in the picture, she'd definitely give you the crown matrimonial. It's Rizzio telling her not to do it.
Right?
On and on.
Putting lies into his head.
And Darnley is Darnley.
Oh, Darnley.
Oh, Darnley.
Darn it, Darnley.
He was easily manipulated.
Gullible as fuck.
To say the least, he was easily manipulated. So Darnley agrees to be part of their plot.
Yeah, basically signing off on it. So on March 9th, 1566... Holyrood Castle, that morning, Darnley and Rizzio, had a friendly game of tennis like Serena and Venus Williams.
Yeah, they played tennis, which I think was something that they did often, but Darnley made sure to do it that morning so nobody would think anything was up. Just think, it's just another day and I'm just playing tennis with my buddy. Maybe my lover, who knows. And that evening, Mary was dining with the 4 Marys that we mentioned previously in the last episode.
and Mary.
And so they were like, hey, Mary, hey, Mary.
Hey, Mary.
Hey, Mary, can you pass the bread? Thanks, Mary. Can you pass the cheese, Mary? No, not that Mary, other Mary. And Rizzio was there, too. So Darnley comes in and joins them for dinner, which is rare. He didn't usually do it, but he was not drunk. He was on his best behavior.
She should have been suspicious from right then.
Yeah, since he was being nice and not drunk, she should have been like, what have you done? But instead, she's just like, well, this is a pleasant surprise. Yeah, you're not
Of course
drunk.
you can have dinner.
You can join us. You're being nice to my friends.
And it was all just great until it wasn't so great.
It was great until it was no longer great.
They fucking ambushed him.
Yeah.
So this guy, Lord Ruthven, he barges the fuck in, full fucking garb of armor, and is like, hey bitch, hand that Rizzio dude over.
And everyone just basically went, huh? What?
What?
Huh? Who? What? Why are you dressed like that? What?
Chica what?
Rizzio?
Chica who?
Yes. Ruthven is like, Rizzio, and Ruthven is a guy that's on Mary's privy council, so he's an important fucking dude.
Yeah.
And he's like, Rizzio is guilty of insulting your honor and other things that I'm not gonna say out loud, but you know what they are. And Mary's like, the fuck are you talking about, dude?
What, bitch? Have you taken your medication?
And she's like,
Psycho.
no, I'm not handing him over. And then he points a pistol in her face. She's fucking queen. She's big and pregnant.
She's pregnant. I read that they did this because they wanted her to miscarry.
I've read that too. They wanted to have her miscarry.
So they created the most dramatic possible scenario, pointing a gun in a pregnant woman's face, being like, hand over the fucking Italian.
Yeah.
And she hands over the fucking Italian, and guess what they do? They stab him to death.
They,
in front of her.
So they probably, what it seems most likely is that, so they were in like her dining room, which was like in front of her bedroom, but then, so they dragged him into the presence chamber, which would be like, if it was a normal day, where she would greet dignitaries and like, or if somebody was coming to visit, have tea in there or something like that. Like the lounge, like the formal lounge area. And so they drag him into that room, but they must have stabbed him at least once in front of her, because she said she felt the air of the dagger go by her. As
like, imagine seeing your friend being stabbed in front of you.
I know. And so like while they're dragging him out of the dining room, he's like clinging on to her skirts, and one of the lords comes and like pulls his finger back, and she has a gun pointed in her face. What is she supposed to do?
She can't do shit.
She can't. And so they drag him into the presence chamber and they stab him. I believe the exact count is 1 billion times. 1 billion times. He is like Swiss cheese at this point.
Yeah, he's just holy.
And so Darnley, when they're dragging him out, Mary's looking at Darnley and she's like, do something. And he's basically just staring out the window.
Like,
he doesn't
I have
want
no idea what you're talking about.
He doesn't want to be on either side. He doesn't want anything to do with this. He's obviously feeling some guilt, but he still wants the guy dead.
Yeah.
You know? And so the lords like come and they're like, you need to come stab Rizzio. And he just kind of keeps like not having anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So the lords take his dagger and stab Rizzio with it and just leave that dagger in there. And that's supposed to be like symbolic of the king knew what was happening.
Yeah.
Like,
and so
he is part of this. Gruesome and horrible. And then when he was dead, they just threw him down the stairs. Like,
oh my god.
Bye. Say bye to the Pope for me.
Oh Lord.
I know. It's
that
horrible.
Is obviously awful.
So Mary shook.
Yeah. that's putting it mildly.
And she's like, we've got to get out. Got to get out of this castle.
Yeah, she doesn't know who's her friend and who's her foe. She doesn't know who's
She notices she is taking stock while this is happening. Who's there and who's absent. And she noticed that that Bothwell guy wasn't part of that. And so she decides that's who I can trust. So she goes to Darnley and starts off with like, why did you do this?
Baby, why?
And he was like, everyone said you were sleeping with him and that the baby you're carrying might be his.
Oh, baby, you so dumb.
And she's like, oh my God, I have married a fucking idiot. She realizes, she's like, I can manipulate him. I'm gonna play the game.
And then so she's like, oh, I forgive you. I love you.
She's like, that was a totally reasonable reaction.
I get it, darling.
I get it. This is fine, darling. Guys, if y'all keep hearing dog barking, we apologize.
I'm sorry.
We have tried everything to get these dogs to shut the fuck up. We're going to try to edit it out, but if you still hear a few...
Sorry about it.
We love dogs! Anyway.
So did Mary Queen of Scots.
So back to Mary Queen of Scots, who also loved dogs. But yeah, she's just like, totally reasonable reaction. I understand why you did this, and I forgive you. But these lords here, they want to control you. Do you see how they've like turned you against me? And he's like, oh my God.
You are so right.
You're so right.
I see the fucking light, girl.
She's like, okay, so Bothwell is our real friend. So we need to go to his estates and see what he advises us to do.
So they take off to Bothwell's place, and they get there, and they start telling everybody about what happened. And before you know it, she raises another fucking army.
I mean, people are pissed. They're like, these, like, idiots held our queen at gunpoint.
Right.
Like, she could have had a panic attack and had a miscarriage, and she could have had a miscarriage and died. You know?
Right.
And so she easily has an army.
And she takes it back and strolls right back into Edinburgh. And
like, right
bitch,
at
I'm
the
back.
head of the army. So just imagine the formidable picture. She's on a big war horse. She's big and pregnant.
Ugh.
She's got on these gorgeous, like, gowns. And she is furious.
She's pissed.
That is,
I mean, if
would
I were-
scare anybody.
Just-
so most of the conspirators take the fuck off to England.
I
They're
would
like,
too.
They're like, oh, she's out for blood.
Yeah.
Our plan has backfired.
Right.
And
That
yeah,
shows you how strong she was. Like, people
Yeah.
were legit scared of her just because of her name and her influence.
so she is heading into her confinement to have her baby. And she's feeling victorious. She is feeling bright about the future, sad about her friend, but like shit like that is never gonna happen again.
So she's been like departed from her brother for like what, a year or so?
Yeah,
like a
and
little over a year or so.
She decides, okay, he obviously wasn't a part of this killing Rizzio because he wasn't here. I'm gonna pardon him so he can come back because I need advisors I can trust. Yeah. And he seems pretty remorseful about what he did.
So she ends up out of, like we've been saying, she's big and pregnant. So guess what happens when you're big and pregnant?
You have a baby.
And she has a baby boy, which is like shook.
You have done
shook.
your job as queen.
Yeah, England is shook.
And she names the baby James because everyone in Scotland is apparently named James. It's like the Marys and the Jameses. Hey James, hey Mary.
Hey Mary,
James. Hey Mary, James, hey
Mary,
James.
James.
Yeah. Baby James is born June 19th, 1566. And
He's a Gemini.
Yeah. In December, they have him baptized in a Catholic ceremony, which annoyed a bunch of people, but what the fuck did you expect?
Mom's Catholic, Dad's Catholic,
Yeah.
so baby Catholic.
What are you expecting? But soon after his baptism, Mary gets really sick.
Nobody really knows what it is, but honestly, if I were to be... I'm no doctor, but I would say postpartum depression
Yeah.
probably kicked in. Her anxiety and depression probably started to snowball.
A lot of people believe now that she probably had a stomach ulcer due to the stress of everything that has been happening to her.
That makes sense. Because she's stressed.
Her advisors brutally murdered her friend in front of her. She realized her husband's an idiot.
Big and pregnant on a fucking horse, riding into battle.
I have an ulcer just thinking about it.
Yeah. Like, this is not easy.
But she went through, at this time, the first of many bouts of, like, they called it melancholy at the time. We would call it depression now.
Yes.
When I was reading up on this, I read, like, just reading about her depression, her bouts of depression, it talks about how a lot of her descendants also were really prone to bouts of depression. And that often is genetic.
It is genetic.
So this, and we have to also remember she's only, 24 right now? And so I think that's a pretty common time for things like that to start kicking in.
To flare up,
her life has also been pretty cush leading up to this point.
Yeah, and now that you put somebody under stress that may or may be predisposed to mental illness, make them break and make it get worse.
And she would start to have these bouts of depression and anxiety periodically for the rest of her life at this point.
So at this point, nobody really likes Darnley
and he's sired a son, so what is he good for at this point? We don't need him anymore.
Yeah, Darnley is just a trophy husband.
A trophy that nobody wants.
Yeah. Like the participation trophy.
Her brother and Bothwell were both like, would you be open to divorcing Darnley? And she said no, not because she was like still in love with him or anything, but because Catholicism forbids it.
I mean, we talked about that in Catherine of Aragon.
Yeah, and she didn't want anything to make it to where anybody could say that her son was not the legitimate heir to the throne.
So here's the story. This is where the mystery really lies. So what happened between the time that her advisors asked her if she'd been open for a divorce and February 10th of 1967.
1567?
19.
That would be a really long period of time from the time that her advisors asked her if she would get a divorce to the year before the Summer of Love. 1567. So we don't know what happened. We don't know who talked to who about what. What did Mary know? And if you do not know where this story is going, hold on to your fucking butts.
Oh. Hold on to your fucking butts.
This question is going to plague Mary's legacy forever. We do know Darnley was fully aware of his unpopularity. So at least he had a little bit of self-awareness.
Right, yeah. He's like, okay, these people really don't like me, so I'm going to hop-tail it over to Glasgow.
Yeah, he goes back to his dad's house. And he actually gets really sick there.
Daddy, I need some help.
Oh, Daddy, they don't like me.
I'm sick.
No,
he was sick.
No. Yeah.
He was legit sick.
Complications of syphilis.
Yeah.
Which is probably a reason he didn't want to be around his wife.
Yeah, touche.
Sorry, babe. Sorry about the syphilis, babe.
So Mary ends up inviting him back. And after about 2 months of this, Mary's like, dude, this
looks bad.
This does not look
Just
good.
come back and we don't really have to live together, but you need to be around.
She was giving him that guilt of like, oh, well, my baby's here. Daddy needs to be around his baby. Like, I think that's the whole game that was happening.
So he did not return back to court to Holyrood Castle. He stayed at a family estate in Edinburgh called Kirklefield. And Mary would go visit him daily. I'm not sure if she was actually trying to mend the relationship.
Or just put on a, PR front.
Make it look like she... we have no idea. Maybe she went and just didn't even see him. We have no idea.
Yeah, she probably just sat in the front lounge area and did not talk to him.
Played Sudoku, yeah. So on February 9th, 1567... Mary was visiting Kirklefield, and she was actually supposed to just stay the night. But then, she suddenly remembered she had a wedding to attend the next morning. What? She didn't have her private secretary any longer telling her what was on her calendar for the next day.
So maybe she really just was bad at planning.
Anyway, so she left
I can relate.
Yes. She left that night. And she's like, okay, I'm going to go back to Holyrood for a couple of days, go to this wedding, and I'll be back in a couple of days. And she goes back and goes to bed.
So at 2 a.m., there's a huge fucking explosion.
And this is the 16th century, so it's not
whoops, we had a pound of manure sitting there next to a fire that blew up.
There was gunpowder held in the cellar directly below Darnley's rooms.
Obviously set up.
This was not
set up.
An accident. It looks like somebody's clearly trying to assassinate the Queen's husband.
So they blow up the fucking room underneath his, expecting him to die. Oh, no.
He doesn't die. He gets out and runs.
Which is what I would do.
Well, like, so I wonder, and we'll never know, but I wonder, since he didn't have any marks on his body to indicate that he was hurt in the explosion, I wonder, did somebody tip him off? It just seems weird that, and also, I also understand that forensic sciences of the 16th century were lacking. So maybe he did have signs of something from the explosion. But anyway, so it appears Darnley survives the explosion. Barnley. He survives the explosion and runs out of the palace barefoot in his nightgown. His body is found the next day out in the gardens along with the body of his valet, both murdered.
Yeah, they had apparently been strangled or smothered.
Yeah.
So, obviously it wasn't the explosion that killed them because their bodies aren't burned. And they're like 50 yards away from the castle and the gardens. Right.
And the murderers also left a chair at by the tree that they were.
I know. I saw it
was like a cloak, a dagger, and a chair, all left on the crime scene. Say what? I don't understand that. I have so many questions for these murderers. His body didn't have any signs from the explosion, like we said. What? I feel like they could have just taken the extra step, strangled him, and then threw him back in the burning building.
Right.
And still maybe they wouldn't have gone away with it then. Maybe somebody still would have been able to figure out, well, this man's been strangled or something. But don't just leave him by a tree, leaving your cloak, dagger, and still inexplicably, why is there a chair there?
Right. Why is there a chair, a cloak? I get the dagger, but
they thought they might need backup.
But So the cloak, obviously somebody had to have been cloaked and came in to light the fire to make it explode. They had a dagger on backup and then also had a rope as well. I don't understand.
What's up with the fucking chair? Escape the building with a chair?
Darnley, they performed Cabaret by Liza Minnelli in front of Darnley. And Darnley was like, I'm gay, I love that.
Mystery solved. Bob Fosse was involved.
With Darnley's murder. So
that got silly. That got really fucking silly.
We really aren't sorry, but I'm going to say we're sorry for being silly.
Yeah. So anyway, it looks bad for Mary.
Because she's under suspicion. People think that she set this whole thing up.
Well, I mean, she had left just a few hours before.
If
it was me, and I'm queen, and my husband is dead, I would be coming down with the full force of the law, being let's find the murderers, let's see what happened, let's investigate. And she was just sort of oh no,
this is fine. What happened to my husband?
Maybe she was in shock.
It's possible.
So
this is odd.
On top of everything, one of the murderers lost a shoe at the murder site.
Was it reverse Cinderella?
Yes.
If this shoe fits, you can't acquit.
And they somehow, I don't fucking know the details, but somehow they were able to say, oh, this belongs to a guy that works for Bothwell.
Uh-huh.
And then everybody was like, oh, Marion Bothwell, that's her top advisor. They have been tight like white ever since the Rizzio. Because they really had been. He has been her right-hand man ever since Rizzio was killed. And so everyone's like, you need to investigate Rizzio, or you need to investigate Bothwell. And she's just sort of
oh, I don't know.
Maybe. I'm going to put it on my to-do list.
Yeah, I'll put that on the calendar.
Elizabeth wrote her a letter. I'm paraphrasing, but it was basically hey, I don't want to assume anything, but you're covering your eyes while the people who murdered your husband run away.
That looks kind of fucking bad.
Oh no, baby, what is you doing? What is you doing?
So rumors start fucking flying, and everyone is talking about how Mary and Bothwell are lovers, which is, I mean, if I was reading the tabloids in 16th century, I would buy it. I'd be like, oh my god, yas, give me that fucking National Enquirer.
Mm-hmm. Ye old National Scottish Enquirer.
And this was really where her popularity amongst her subjects really took a nosedive.
Just tanked. And
the polls weren't looking so well for her.
It even got back to Catherine de Medici being like, hey, your daughter-in-law is a trash person. Darnley's dad was like, hey, everyone knows it was Barthwell? No. Everyone knows it was Bothwell. Barthwell. Barthwell. Everyone knows it's Bothwell. Bring him to court. Let's put him on trial. This is not cool that you're not doing anything.
And then Darnley's dad is like, hey, everyone knows Bothwell did this motherfucking shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's obviously guilty, so he needs to be tried for this.
And Mary's like, fine, let's try him.
She's like, I guess so.
Darnley's dad was like, cool, give me a little time to gather some evidence. And she's like, no, like, we have to do this right now.
And then he's like, wait, right now?
And she's like, yeah, right now.
Like, now?
Like, this moment, we need to do it. And so, in April of the same year, so the murder was February 10th. The trial's like April 12th. Bothwell is tried by a court of his peers, and it was a fucking joke.
Well, I mean, you're given how many, like, a couple weeks
to
prepare?
They had no time to prepare. Witnesses were, didn't show up.
Well, I mean, if you have to travel from 100 miles away on horseback, that could take some time.
And the right-hand man of the queen is telling you, like, maybe it wouldn't be so good for your family if you showed up.
Yeah, maybe I'll
like
bash your kneecaps in. And you don't do something.
Yeah, maybe Bothwell is part of the mob. We don't fucking know.
Right?
Seems right. Seems accurate. And
so the prosecution really didn't have
enough time to put anything together.
Yeah.
And the trial lasted 6 or 7 hours, and at the end of the day, Barthwell was acquitted. Barthwell.
So at this point, Mary has been put through the ringer.
Yeah.
Let's just say that to
yes.
Yeah. And her mental health may not be quite as what it used to be.
In short, it was bad.
Yeah. Remember we said that after the birth of James, I think that she may have had not only like she had a stomach ulcer, but I think it was led by the postpartum depression, led by all the stress. So that just really culminated and has really taken a toll on her.
Think in modern day she'd be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder.
Yes. I think, like, with mental illness, like, whenever you have an episode or an attack, it becomes easier and easier and easier for that to happen again.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened is originally she had this stomach ulcer and the really big where her mental health was bad, but that manifested in her body. So that means she has a high stress level. So once that happened, it became easier and easier for her brain to go to that.
Yeah.
So she's definitely got a severe anxiety disorder.
I mean, her people are turning against her. They're accusing her of murder. She's a new mother still. Her baby's not even a year old at this point, right? Like, there's a lot of shit going on with her.
And so Bothwell, like we just said, he's ended
a free
up getting
man.
He got acquitted. The shoe didn't fit. He got acquit.
Yeah. So Bothwell, this is where the story. I have so many question marks for like the next 10 minutes of this story.
Right. We could go on and on.
Bothwell, and we are skimming over a lot just for the sake of continuity. Mm-hmm. There are so many rabbit holes. We implore you to go down them.
And this episode's going to be longer than our other ones. So
Bothwell must have been really fucking persuasive guy because he had convinced at least 20 nobles and religious leaders to sign a bond that agreed that he was innocent of the Darnley situation and that he would be a suitable husband for Mary if she was to agree to it.
And then a couple days later, He proposes to Mary.
And their official report is that she said no. But of course she's going to say no for all the cameras or whatever because he was suspected of murdering her husband. I'm really in the weeds about this bond that everybody signed.
I know.
Because she would still have to ratify it. So he would not have gone to all the trouble of getting them. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't have a degree in 16th century law. Okay. But I believe that, what a weird degree that would be.
16th century law.
To be like, try to go get a job with that and be like, oh, I see you studied law. And I'm like, 16th century law. But I'm pretty sure Scottish 16th century law. Is the job mine?
Very niche market.
Yeah. But no, I believe any bond like that, for it to hold water, the Queen's life like that, she would have to ratify it. She would have to agree. So there are theories. She told Bothwell to go get that in the first place. But then, and so that's the only reason all these people would sign it anyway, because nobody really liked Bothwell all that much.
But the other theories are that the Scottish lords were basically just trying to usurp her power and trying to.
And they thought doing it through Bothwell would be
the best way, because Bothwell has connections.
Anyway, so she says no to his proposal. So since she had officially said no, he had to kidnap her. Obviously,
because that's what you do. You kidnap the person that tells you no. That sounds like.
So Mary had been visiting Sweet Baby James at Stirling Castle.
Sweet Baby James.
Sweet Baby James.
Sweet Baby Jane.
Yeah. Sweet Baby James was in Stirling Castle, which is from Holyrood Castle, is about a 45-minute drive. So let's say that's like a 3-hour horse ride or something like that. So she's riding back to Edinburgh, and Bothwell catches up with her, and he's like, no, Edinburgh has been taken by enemy forces. You have to come back with me to Dunbar Castle, and I'll keep you safe.
And she's like, okay.
Why wouldn't I believe you?
I mean, why wouldn't I believe you? I'll go with you. Like, I need to be kept safe because everybody's trying to kill me right now.
And so they get back to Dunbar Castle, where supposedly he goes, you are now my prisoner, and rapes her. So the reason that he raped her is so then she would be bound by honor to marry him. Because back then, in that day, that was a pretty common thing for nobodies. But I'm sorry, if I'm queen and somebody rapes me, I'm not about to marry them. I'm not some peasant girl who needs to keep the honor of her family going so other people will trade sheeps with her or what the fuck ever. Like, I would have this dude hung and castrated in the middle of town.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit and say maybe it was the Scottish lords that orchestrated this whole thing with Bothwell. I don't know. I
don't buy it for a second. What I think happened, and feel free to have a conversation with us about this. Send us a message if you want to chat about this. What I think happened, she felt like Bothwell was the only person in the world she could trust, that she felt safe with. She wanted to marry him because she couldn't be open about it, because she couldn't tell the world I trust him, I feel safe with him, because he had been under investigation for killing her husband. So she made up this whole elaborate story of being in her possibly bipolar mind or something, being like, this is the only way people are ever going to accept it if I act like I had to marry him. Oh, the Lord signed this bond that I had to marry him. And then I told him no, but then he kidnapped me and I wanted to preserve my honor. So I think she wanted to marry him because up to this point, he's the only person that hasn't used her trust. You know what? Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
No, it makes sense. But I'm gonna do the on the contrary and say that he and his people had set him up to be that way.
Yeah,
and had set him up to be close to Mary. I know it's a long shot, because honestly, I do feel like, yeah, your theory is right, because she had to have known she's the queen, and she would have been like, bitch, no, I'll have my people kill you.
Yeah. You don't fucking rape the
But
queen.
at the same point, there was somebody, I think his name was John Hay was the name that I read, that on his execution day, and he on his execution block said it was not Mary that did this. It was the Scottish Lords planned the whole thing and said, nope, the Scottish Lords did the whole coup. But that's what I read, was that there was a dude that basically said, no, she had nothing to do with this. It was the Scottish Lords.
And what would somebody on an execution block have to lose?
Why would they lie?
Yeah.
Why would they lie?
If anybody wants to discuss this with us, message us on Facebook. I feel like that's the best way to chat with us.
If the shoe don't fit, you must acquit.
But after the either rape or quote-unquote rape, I feel dirty saying that, the quote-unquote rape. After the ordeal, after all this, she agrees to marry him.
Nathan's on record saying rape.
Quick side note, Bothwell was already married.
Yeah, surprise. And he got a divorce.
Like, quickest divorce ever granted.
Real quick.
16th century standards. Quick. And
so, love you, babe. Don't really. Bye.
So Mary marries for a third time. And this one was in a Protestant ceremony.
Yeah, Mary's getting married again. Third time's the charm.
But I think it's
not.
so weird that she decided to do a Protestant ceremony this time. I feel like this part of Mary's life, we have lost the Mary that we know and love.
Yeah.
The light has gone out of her eyes. The fire's gone out of her heart. It's only been 12 weeks since her husband has been murdered. So people that...
They're not warming up to this really quickly.
I mean, that's fast. I mean, even now, like, could you imagine if my husband died and I got married 12 weeks later? What would people be saying?
What?
And back then, they respected mourning times. Like, it was almost like a law. So it's like, oh, what?
And the Scottish Lords think that Bothwell has gotten a little too big for his britches, has a little bit too much influence. And they're like, he's going to go crazy and try to grab power. And guess what? He did.
He does. The Catholics in Scotland, as well as the Catholics in all the other Christian nations in the world, don't recognize this marriage. And if you're just Bob on the street that runs a shop, who the fuck cares if these people don't recognize your marriage? But when you're the queen of a nation, if you have the king in France going, oh, well, you're living in sin. Because he had been married to another person 10 days previous.
And got divorced.
And, like...
This is like Scottish Thug Lords.
Yes! Scottish Thug Lords band name, I call it. But no, this is some soap opera shit. Hey, guess who was having a fucking field day with this shit?
Oh.
John Knox.
Oh, surprise, surprise, misogyny.
But he's just preaching like, what have I been telling you guys? She's an adulteress.
She's a charlatan.
She's living with a man who has a wife that's still
She's a
alive.
whore.
She killed her husband. I mean...
She's evil. She needs to be killed. She is Satan's spawn. She is the Antichrist.
And on top of all of this, Mary and Bothwell aren't getting along.
No.
They are not as well suited as they thought they were going to be. So their relationship was not strong enough. Their 3-week-old relationship was not strong enough to bear the criticism that
And
they
you
were
could
getting.
also like bring across the argument that she was raped and held hostage, so obviously she was not happy about this
marriage.
Yeah.
But
She's fucking pregnant.
homegirl is fertile myrtle. She just needed to be given more chances.
And
like,
she
just needs a husband she could stand more, and she would have had her like 12 kids or some shit, you know?
Right? And as a queen, you think, oh, I'm pregnant. This is a happy occasion.
Yes.
And this is a positive thing.
I think she honestly thought that I'm going to announce this and it's going to unite the country. Everybody's going to be so happy. They're going to forget about all the arguing. And she was incorrect, ma'am.
Wrong-o.
No. Everyone was like, cool, you're pregnant with bastards. Or like, no, this is just going to give this crazy guy who could turn into a tyrant, more power.
Exactly.
Oh, great. Bring more murderers into this world. Like, no one
No, thank you.
was happy about this.
People were hoping that she'd have the marriage annulled, but...
No, she's pregnant.
Not gonna happen. She's
not gonna have the marriage annulled because she wants the baby she's carrying to have titles and stuff and not be a bastard. She's like, yay, I'm pregnant! And everybody goes... And like she's just like, oh, cool, fucking shoot me in the face. Like, she gets depressed again, as she is wont to do at this time in her life.
So the Scottish Thug Lords,
yes, Scottish Thug Lords,
they decide that she is unfit to be queen. Basically,
I am not going to completely disagree with them.
Okay.
She is making a lot of bad decisions in quick succession.
Yeah.
Think they were completely in the wrong. The country hated her. The people hated her.
Yeah.
She was
true.
And she was making lots of bad decisions, and she was making Scotland look bad domestically. Like, the foreign factions that, like, they needed to make alliances with. England was just sitting around going, honey, what is you doing? Like, I don't completely disagree with them. If it was a man, do I think they would have done this? No. They would have been like, he's just going through some shit. He'll get over it.
He'll get over it.
But since she was a woman, they felt entitled to tell her she was unfit to rule.
I can agree with that.
So Mary gets word that they want to overthrow her, and she is pissed.
I mean, you should be.
So she does that thing where she gathers forces and rides at the head of...
Because she's real good at that.
She is real... Even, there are people that are always going to support the queen or the king or whoever's born to that position. So it's easier for them because they don't have to prove as much to gather forces.
Yeah. So the people that were her forces at the time and the lords that were,
lords that were against her were called the Confederate Lords.
Yes.
And then the ones that were for her were just the...
Queensmen. The Queen's Guard.
The Scottish people. Or what, whatever. So they go to meet at battle. And Mary has a lot more troops than the Confederate Lords do. But they show up, and Mary is flying. Because they would always carry in the flags...
Of whoever you're supporting.
So you knew who was enemy, you knew who was on your team. And so they're just carrying the flag of Scotland, which is like a lion or whatever. The Confederate Lords are carrying a flag that has a dead body under a tree. To like represent you killed your husband. But they all hated Darnley.
They wanted him dead too.
Why are they all of a sudden like... Oh, now that it's convenient, we're going to be like, oh, in the memory of Darling Darnley.
That is why I think it is the Scottish lords that set this all up. Because they literally killed Darnley to make her look bad.
Oh, no. That
is what they did.
That is a whole other rabbit hole we just don't have time for.
So let's move on.
So, the long and short of it is Mary rides her troops out. The Confederate Lords ride their troops out. Mary's doing that whole thing where she's riding at the front of the army, looking all gorgeous in her...
Dramatic
because she was a very stunning-looking person.
And to be at the head of an army...
And to be the head of the army, and a woman with her long auburn hair flowing behind her on her big war horse.
Big red.
Yeah. Big red on a big horse in front of a big army. And so she tells her forces, she's like... Y'all are awesome. Y'all have God behind you. I'm going to go watch out from this hill up here. So she goes up to that hill up there and watches them get slaughtered.
Yeah, it was not a pretty sight.
Her forces are... There were more of them, but the Confederate Lords were more skilled.
More organized.
And also a lot of... the Queensmen deflected once they realized, oh fuck, they got that guy over there. Oh no, that guy's gonna kill me. Deflected.
Let's go.
She's defeated and she surrenders. She's just like, I mean, how much can a person take? Because it was like bam, 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 bam. Rizzio was killed. She had her baby. Darnley was killed. She's maybe forced into a marriage. And then her lords turn on her. This is all in like the span of like a year and a half.
Yeah. She had a rough year and a half.
This was, at this point, she's just like, I'm fucking done.
Yeah, she surrenders to it all.
Can you blame her?
No, I would not.
I would.
She just went through hell and back.
They take her back to Loch Leven Castle, where she's imprisoned and forced to abdicate. Why was that word so hard for me to say? Forced to abdicate to her 1-year-old son, James.
So whenever she's riding through and going to Edinburgh, the people of the town are just like yelling and screaming at her, whore, adulterer,
slut, murderer. Like, her entire life has been treated like this, oh my God, everybody loves you.
Yeah.
In Scotland, and when she was a baby, oh my God, everybody loves you. Sent over to France, everyone was just like, she's the smartest, most beautiful, most precious child. She comes back to Scotland, everyone's like, oh my God, our queen is so beautiful and well-spoken. And now her people are calling her whore, slut, murderer.
So she is just like, what alternate universe do I live in now?
In the meantime, John Knox is having a wet dream.
Of course he is, because he's a douche canoe.
So, sadly, while she's imprisoned at Loch Leven Castle, first of all, when I say prison, she's not, like, in a tiny cell. I mean, she's still got, like, a whole wing of the castle.
Yeah.
She just can't leave.
She's not...
She's still got her Marys, and she's like, hey, Mary, and they're like, hey, Mary, hey, Mary, hey, Mary.
Pass the butter.
Pass the butter, Mary. And, like, she's still got her tapestries and shit like that, but she's just can't leave.
Yeah.
And so...
she ends up miscarrying at this point. They finally got their way, and she miscarries.
And she miscarries twins. Okay, let's try to keep this rabbit hole short, because we've still got a lot of stuff to cover. But, so if her first sexual encounter with Bothwell was just a couple of days before they married, and she's having a miscarriage just a few months later, would they actually have been able to tell if it was twins or not? That's what modern day skeptics say. She must have gotten pregnant at an earlier time. Date than when she was kidnapped by Bothwell.
I mean, again, I am no fucking doctor, but it sounds about right, because how would you be able to tell if it was twins after a couple of months? Like, 2 months? Like, you wouldn't be able to tell it's twins?
Okay, so we're just gonna not... Again, if you know something we don't know, if you've researched this morning...
Did she fuck Darnley whenever...
Oh, not when he's all full of syphilis. Remember, he was sick with syphilis.
I mean, do we know? Maybe we don't. That's why,
when people are like
let
super...
us know.
Yeah, if you know... We would love to chat with you about it.
Tell us something else.
We'll do a redaction in our next episode or whatever if we got this
mind.
wrong. Yeah, set up a booth. Mary slept with Bothwell before he kidnapped her. Change my mind. Anyway, so this miscarriage almost kills her. Like, she is so sick. And I am a strong believer in that your mind can affect your health.
Absolutely.
And so if she's in one of her bouts of depression... and she has this miscarriage, I think her bout of depression is making her sickness so much worse. Do you agree?
Yeah, I can agree with that.
So she's really sick, and they think she might die. And as disgusting as it is, I think a lot of people were like, well, if she just died, that would solve all of our problems.
It would be cool.
Like, we wouldn't have to have her abdicate, which might cause civil war. Da-da-da-da-da.
Hashtag Scottish Thug Lords.
Yeah.
So on
July... also, at this time, we haven't discussed where Barfwell is. Because Barfwell, as soon as he saw that the battle between the Confederate lords and the Queen's men was going south...
Bitch ran off.
He ran to Denmark. He died in Denmark, a prisoner. I don't know what he did in Denmark to piss them off so much, but he died in a jail, chained to a post for 10 years. Insane, penniless. I didn't have time to do a deep dive into that.
That is a whole nother...
But if everything people said he did, maybe karma
Okay.
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 Oh. Anyway,
Cardi
I've
B.
digressed. Back to the story.
So on July 24th of 1567, Lord Ruthven...
Remember him? The guy that, like, dragged Rizzio
Yeah,
out?
the one that, like, initiated the whole stabbing of them. And a couple of other lords with Lord Ruthven. They bring papers to sign that would say, you know, she would formally, you know, not be queen anymore, abdicate her throne, and she would abdicate it to her 1-year-old son, James. Lord.
Yeah.
And she is laid up in bed because... You know, you just had a miscarriage and you had a bunch of drama.
And
so,
she's sick as shit, you know, and she's...
I'm in pain, so maybe I might sign this. And the lords are yelling at her and telling her that she's lost all of her fucking credibility.
And at first she refuses, which, again, for a second we see the light of the Mary that we know and love.
Yeah.
Being like, no, God has called me to this position. I won't abdicate.
That glimmer of the Mary we
But
used
she's
to know.
so sick, and she's so weak, and they're yelling at her, and they're these big, powerful men, and they're threatening her, being like, look what you've done to this country.
Yeah.
And so she signs.
And so Mary ends up actually regaining a little bit, honestly, of her mental health first, and then her physical health.
Because she was at Lochleven Castle for about a year or so. Mm-hmm. So she recovers.
Yeah,
she
gets her wits.
A lot of people didn't think she would, so she recovers.
And she's able to actually plan a little bit of a coup here and get a plan together to escape.
She is like, I have to get out of here. So
she dresses as a washerwoman.
Yeah,
like
it wasn't the best plan.
A laundry gal. And she's, you know,
I'm
going to get on this boat because I wash laundry every day. And the dude
the washerwomen would, like, you know, maybe they lived across a pond or something.
Yeah.
So they would often take a boat to, you know, so it wasn't that uncommon. Or, I've got to bring these clothes over to that castle over there.
Yeah, but the dude that, like, was on the boat, he's on a boat, bitch. And that dude that was on a boat.
Me, I'm on a mother. Was T-Pain there?
Yeah, he was.
So T-Pain was driving the boat, right?
Yes,
so it was
he was on a
T-Pain
boat.
that was like, let me see your hands. Because he was
See
like...
me with them hands.
Yeah, he was like, the guy that drove the boat, who in this story is T-Pain, was like, you don't look like the normal washerwoman. And she was like...
Qu'est-ce que c'est? And then she spoke French and he was like, oh, bitch.
And she was like, the normal washerwoman has the flu. And so he was like, the boat captain was like, well, let me see. Like, he was like, takes her basket of clothes to examine, but then he sees her hands. And I'm sorry, if you're a washerwoman who, now I guess Mary would be in like 27, 28, something like that. If you're a washerwoman who's been working with your hands since you were 12,
you would look pretty ratchet.
Your hands are going to be calloused.
They're going to be ratchet.
Your nails are going to be... You're not going to have cute nails. They're going to be all torn up. You're going to have maybe dry hands. And her hands look like someone who's never washed clothes in their life.
Because she's like, fresh manicure.
And he's like, you're Mary Queen of Scots, aren't you? And she was like, oh, fuck.
You found me.
So she gets returned back. But then, a few months later, so the guy that ran the castle was this guy named Douglas, which... Don't Google guy from Scotland named Douglas, because they're all named Douglas. Like, all of them. It's a very
Douglas
popular
and
last
James.
name. Well, Douglas was his last name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a
James
very common...
Douglas.
Yes. And yes, James Douglas, the most Scottish 16th, 15th century last name. So, the guy that ran the castle's younger brother fell in love with Mary. As people were wont to do, because she's beautiful.
6 foot fine.
And, yeah. And he decided to help her. So it's May 1568, and it's the May Day Festival. We've talked about the May Day Festival very briefly in the Anne Boleyn episode. It was just it was kind of like Mardi Gras now. Like, everyone parties and dances, and so there's a huge May Day Festival going on at the party, and they get the... Douglas that runs the castle drunk, and he passes out. And Mary is able to sneak out in plain sight because everyone's dancing, drinking, eating.
Having a good time.
No one is looking at her. So she gets to the water.
That is a ballsy move for Mary.
And it's not like she was alone. She had her posse. She had her 4 Marys and at least a dozen advisors with her.
So it's like this whole crew is just like, all right, let's go. Let's bounce this
Mary,
party.
you ready? Yeah. What about you, Mary? Mary?
Mary?
We're all
Check.
ready?
Go.
Okay, cool.
So they end up fleeing to England.
And like the whole time they're on the way to England, all of her advisors are like, I really think France would be a better idea.
Yeah, probably would have been.
And she's like, Elizabeth she's gonna look at me and be like, you're a fellow queen. Your rights have been taken. Because she did sign away her rights under duress.
Yeah.
I feel like that can't be disputed. She was not in sound mind when she signed away her rights. Elizabeth is gonna have my fucking back here. It's going to be great.
It ended up being a bad decision.
It was not a bad decision. It was not a good decision. She really should have gone to France.
Yeah.
Because in France, they're Catholic.
She already knew people in France. She was related to people in France. Go to France, girl.
France was a lot further, though. It was a bad decision.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's like, hey, bitch, remember how you used to go around saying you were the rightful ruler of England? Because Elizabeth remembers that.
Yeah, right? She is not gonna
And also, why is Elizabeth... She's already told your brother that she's not going to spend money on a Scottish civil war. So why would she do it for you?
Yeah, touche. So
she arrives in England.
She waltzes into England, and Elizabeth obviously refuses her troops. But
she promises her protection.
Yeah, she's like, okay, I'll keep you safe.
She's like, you can have sanctuary here.
So she gets a cush-ass pad. She gets another castle with a wing in it.
So Mary is safe, and she doesn't actually have to do anything.
Yeah, it's like she's far enough away that she doesn't have to visit with me every now and then.
Yeah, no, they keep her, they keep Mary at first up, like, in the north of England, and obviously, Elizabeth lives in London, which is the south of England. So it's like, okay, you're still in my country where I can have people keep an eye on you, because have no mistake about it, Elizabeth had an amazing spy system.
Yeah, she that's an understatement.
Yeah, but she's like, but you're far enough away that I don't have to see you, because these two women never met in person.
Yeah.
They never met.
So speaking of her and her little spy system of Elizabeth, she ends up deciding, I'm going to grant her asylum. Mm-hmm. I'll grant her, her little prison, but I'm going to secretly investigate what happened with this whole Darnley thing.
She's like, I want to get to the bottom of it. She's like, I feel like the Scottish thug lords didn't investigate this very well. So
they had a conference in New York to decide what to do with her. And Elizabeth decides that she doesn't have the right to convict or declare Mary innocent at that point. She didn't gather enough evidence to be like, yeah, she was guilty of the murder, or no, she's innocent.
But what's fucked up, her brother James, who's now the regent in Scotland for baby James, sends these letters to Elizabeth. And it makes my blood boil, because it's like, he never mentioned these any time before, but he says he found these letters. They're called the casket letters now, because they were found, I guess casket just meant box back then. They were found in a box, like under Mary's bed or whatever. And they are love letters to Bothwell and marriage, like mock marriage contracts drafted up to Bothwell that predate Darnley's murder.
Fake news.
Even modern day people, though, can't decipher if they're fake or real. Because even Mary was like, my handwriting is very easily mocked. I don't have special distinct handwriting. Anybody could copy these. But whenever brother James sent those over, I just kind of wanted to be like, you're not a part of this. Why
is he coming into this?
Leave it alone.
Because of the Scottish thug lord.
He's a Scottish thug lord.
It's a Scottish thug lord thing. It's like the mafia for Scottish people.
Yeah. But anyway, like you said, Elizabeth is just like, okay, I will admit that this is suspicious, but I don't have the right to call her guilty, not guilty. What I'm going to do, I'm going to say that I see her as the rightful Queen of Scotland, so I'm going to house her and keep her safe, and I'm done with this. I'm done thinking about this. I got other shit to do. Scotland, you're not my top priority.
Yeah,
bye. Yeah, well, Mary was happy with it
but she's imprisoned
a while. So again, starting in early 1569, Mary's moved again, and this time it's clear that she's no longer a guest. She is a prisoner.
Yeah, a prisoner
with hundreds of servants and like a
jewels.
whole wing of a castle that's hers. But she couldn't go where she wanted to. She couldn't she was a very active person, so she couldn't like ride her horses and go hunting wherever she wanted to. She couldn't receive guests, willy-nilly or anything.
No.
What changed to make her become a prisoner, you ask? The Duke of Norfolk, he is the grandson of Anne Boleyn's uncle. The one that, was such a dick in her situation. Do you remember that guy?
So he's trying to play his cards right.
Yeah, so just historically, the Duke of Norfolk's fucking suck.
Norfolk.
So the Duke of Norfolk was also Catholic, and he had supposedly fallen in love with Mary, which is apparently just a thing that happens to every man.
I feel like that's a recurring theme.
And he proclaims that he's going to marry her, and they're going to take England and Scotland back together. Mary herself had nothing to do with this.
Yeah, she was like, who, what?
She still considers herself married because Bothwell is still alive.
Yeah.
She's like, well,
I still have a husband.
I can't do that since I don't believe in bigamy. So Elizabeth is like, okay, as long as she is able to like move around freely, there are always going to be plots in her name.
Yeah.
So I need to put a pin in this. All right. She's imprisoned. She's staying with my best friend, Bess Hardwick, and Bess's husband, and my network of spies are never going to have eyes off of her. Speaking of Bess Hardwick, she was married to the Earl of Shrewsbury, and Bess Hardwick is incredibly fascinating. She was the second richest woman in England. The first was Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Bess was barely not as rich as Elizabeth.
Probably by design.
And the Earl of Shrewsbury was her fourth husband, I believe. I do want to do Bess Hardwick one day as a Bad and Bougie episode. But anyway.
That led to their marriage, completely dissolving.
Mary was in their care, for lack of a better word, for 20 years. And their marriage just the stress of it and the financial burden of it, because Elizabeth wasn't sending them money to house a queen.
Yeah.
So, the financial burden, the stress, Bess thought maybe her husband and Mary had a thing going.
So
their marriage really took a hit there.
Sounds like the plot keeps thickening.
The plots. Speaking of plots, the plots keep coming.
And there was a civil war in Scotland, and her brother was assassinated by them Catholic dicks.
Brother James was assassinated. So the English
Scottish thug lords.
The Scottish fucking thug lords.
That's what happened. The Catholics got rid of those Scottish thug lords.
Well, no. It was Catholic Scottish thug lords that killed.
It was.
So the English Catholics are like, well, now that the regent's dead, she's the queen. We can get Mary reinstated, and that was squashed.
Yeah, the Pope made an announcement that he doesn't recognize Elizabeth because obviously she's Protestant
and a bastard.
Yeah, and gives the English Catholics free range to basically just assassinate her because they're like, oh, she's not your queen, so might as well kill her.
So he's basically like, yeah, if anybody kills her, you will be absolved of this.
Yeah, I'll pardon you, basically.
And then, so there were plots to kill her and put Mary on the throne. That never came to anything. There was a plot called the Ridolfi plot, where the Duke of Norfolk, again, is plotting with Spain to kill Elizabeth and put Mary on the throne.
The Duke of Norfolk was executed for this.
Yeah.
So don't give him much cred.
Why would... I'm so sorry. if you get pardoned by Elizabeth once,
don't try again.
She's a lot better than Henry VIII, but she is still the daughter
of Henry
VIII. Don't fuck with her.
Nope.
Anyway.
So Mary's
hindsight is 20/20.
Right, it always is. So Mary's health at this time is not really that stellar.
She's not exercising like she liked to. She'd always been a very, very active person. And she's also a very big person. So whenever a big person
gets bigger,
is not in motion, she's gaining weight. And she's already 6 foot tall. So like it's not good for her health to be limited.
Her hair starts falling out. Like she starts to really deteriorate pretty quickly during this time.
And it's so sad because she's not old.
She's 50?
No, she's barely 30.
Oh, whoa.
Whenever her looks really start to go, but she looks 50.
Whoa.
And like, I'm not talking about like Oprah, Jennifer Aniston, modern day 50. I'm talking about 16th century 50. She looks rough.
She took a nosedive.
And also she'd go through serious bouts of depression, as one who's not even prone to depression might do when locked up all the time.
for how many years? So her son, James, ends up being raised by the
Scottish thug lords.
Yes. And they tell him that every day, your mom's a heretic, and she's the reason that your father was killed, and she's the cause of all this drama.
She would write him all the time, and he never once returned any of her letters. Ouch!
Yeah.
Ouch!
So did he not return them because they were being filtered?
I mean, but at some point during her imprisonment, he would have been an adult. He would have been in his majority, so he would have gotten those letters.
Yeah.
Maybe not when he was a little kid. Maybe they were being thrown away. But as an adult, he would have gotten those letters, and he chose not to return them because he was taught, your mother is an adulteress, whore who killed your dad. And so he was like, why do I want to talk to a lady that killed my dad,
Killed my dad, right. Anyway, rabbit hole again. So, in 1584, after about 15 years of imprisonment, Mary writes to James and proposes something a little bit interesting.
Yeah.
She's like, I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why she did this. She was like, James,
I don't know why she thought this would work.
She was like, hey, James, let's be a team, and let's rule this country together. And he's like, bitch, I don't even know you.
Yeah. She was like, I'll stop any communications with the Pope. The Pope will not have anything to do with it. We'll rule as co-regents. I can come home and we'll unite Scotland. There will stop being civil war. And then Elizabeth will have to appoint you as her heir. And James... we're not going to call him Sweet Baby James anymore.
No, he's adult baby James.
What did King James do with this information?
He was like, hey, let me call up Elizabeth. And
so he texts Elizabeth and is like, can you talk right now? Can you call me?
And she was like, sure, I got plenty of time. So Elizabeth takes the phone call and formally recognizes James as the King of Scotland.
And that is so jacked up because up to this point, she was still formally recognizing Mary as Queen of Scotland.
So she went behind her back,
she
took the
flips,
phone call.
And, I mean, it's good for James because now that she's recognizing him as the actual King of Scotland, it becomes more and more apparent, okay, she's definitely going to name him as her heir.
And that is ultimately Mary's whole purpose in
but
this.
Still, fucking ouch. She was just like trying to be a part of it, and they just went behind her back and made their own pact.
There's so many pacts in here. There's so many like little plots against so and so, and like it's so much drama. Speaking of plots,
the plot that was in the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, I hate to be brutal about it, but the nail in the coffin.
It's called the Babington plot.
So, the motherfucking Babington plot.
The motherfucking Babington plot.
Mary.
Please, somebody write this rap song. The motherfucking Babington plot. Yeah. Anyway.
Mary, like we said, she's been in prison for like 19, 20 years. Like, she's been in there for a really fucking long time.
Again, prison in a castle with all her attendants and everything, but continue.
And so this dude named Anthony Babington plot. Anthony Babington starts writing to Mary in this little secret code, and I think they put it like in like used beer.
So it would it would be
sort of
in
things.
beer barrels in like the spout.
Yes.
And so you could pull it out. And so the very first letter he wrote her came with like a deciphering code.
And they wrote between each other with that deciphering code. And Mary eventually, you know, they put this plot together that's like with the help of Spain to kill Elizabeth and put Mary on the throne because she's goddamn tired of being imprisoned.
So, yes. That was... it's so convoluted.
I don't think that happened. I don't think any of that.
Well, no.
happened.
He definitely wrote to her and was like, "This is what we want to do. We want to kill Elizabeth, and we want to put you on the throne. And Spain is going to come and release you." And she never wrote back saying, "Yes, let's kill Elizabeth," or "When are we going to kill Elizabeth?" or "Killing Elizabeth sounds super cool." She wrote back saying, "When can I expect them?" So all we can really say that she was definitely down with was being freed. And so...
Touche. But, I mean, just be like, okay, when is this going to happen? It's like, okay, I know what's happening.
Yeah, and I'm not telling any of my captors or anything, hey, they want to kill her. So, unfortunately for Babington and Mary... Elizabeth had this amazing network of spies, as we've already discussed.
Yeah.
There was this one guy named Francis Walsingham, and he knew the plot was brewing from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so he started incepting her letters the moment Babington started writing to her. So, and he even knew that they would be transferred in, like, the spout of the beer barrels.
How did you know that?
Because he has... spies in Europe because
is that a common thing?
Babington came from Spain, I think, and so it was like the spies were there being like, "We're gonna hide the letters." No, they thought they were being very clever, but just Elizabeth's forces were more cleverer.
Yeah, so Walsingham was actually Secretary of State, and it was...
If it was up to Walsingham, they would have executed Mary the moment her feet touched English soil.
Yeah, she would have been gone.
Yeah, he didn't trust her for a hot second. Mm-hmm. So they're sending these encrypted messages back and forth, and Walsingham the whole time is intercepting them, copying them down, and then letting them go. The final letter, the last letter Mary wrote in this correspondence was, "Let the plot commence." Again, she didn't say, "Let the murder commence. Let's go ahead and kill."
She just wants to get free.
But let the plot commence. Doesn't sound good.
The plot is actually to kill the queen. So yeah, and there's an alternate theory out there that these letters that were written in between everybody is all fake. Like they
completely staged it. Yeah,
they staged it. Elizabeth staged it.
I don't buy it because
why would Elizabeth let her live for so long just to kill her in the end?
Just to kill her for no reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe Mary acknowledged her correspondence with Babington.
She did.
So anyway, Mary gets put on trial.
Yes, and the English people really didn't care for Mary, so this trial was not going to be what we consider a fair trial.
No.
She's put on trial for conspiracy and treason.
And the whole time she's like, how can it be treason? I'm not an English citizen.
Yeah, I'm from Scotland, and I'm not committing a crime against
England. It was a total
anyone.
kangaroo court.
Yeah, it totally was.
Much like Bothwell's trial, Mary wasn't given enough time to build her defense. The people in the jury were lords who were already gunning for her execution, and had been for 2 decades already. So on December 25th... October 25th. That's wrong.
Yeah.
On October 25th, 1586, she was found guilty and sentenced to death.
Yeah, and Elizabeth ended up having to sign that warrant.
So she signed the death warrant. She gave it to Walsingham and said, don't carry this out without my permission. But he already had the ink on the paper. He didn't need... Yeah, he had a legal land. He had a legal leg to stand on by just being like, all I heard is that you signed this, so I'm going to carry this out.
So there's a lot of drama between whether or not Elizabeth actually meant to sign for the execution.
Or if she just wanted plausible...
deniability.
I honestly think that Elizabeth signed it to have in her back pocket the next time Mary did something.
Ah, that makes sense.
To be like, hey, as a threat, like,
hey, the next time you
fuck
fuck
with
up,
me again,
you did.
This is going to happen. But her lords took it upon themselves to be like, enough is enough. Next time we might not catch wind. Let's do it. In February 1587, someone came to Mary and was like, you are to be executed tomorrow. And Mary was like, tomorrow? Can I get like a week or so to like settle my affairs? And dude yelled at her. He was like, no, madam, you must die. Be ready at 7 or 8 in the morning. It cannot be delayed a moment beyond that time. That's a direct quote.
Is this a blessing or a curse? I feel like it's a blessing to me to not be able to know that, like, it's like, oh, the day before you die, oh, you're gonna die.
Yeah,
like,
so you don't have to...
I wouldn't know.
It's like the opposite of Anne Boleyn, where hers kept getting delayed, and it was tortured for her, whereas, like, you don't have time to think about it too much.
I would rather that. I would rather not have to think about it and just be like, somebody's like, you're dying tomorrow.
And it's like, oh,
okay.
So she spent that night.
Traumatic for a day.
She spent that night settling her affairs. She wrote letters to James. She wrote letters to her brother-in-law in France. She spent this time. They denied her priest, but she still prayed. She prayed and prayed. And prayed and prayed and prayed.
Pray, Mary, pray.
Pray, Mary. Pray, Mary. Keeps on praying.
Is that a Proud Mary reference?
Yeah. The next day, they walk her to the scaffolding, and it's built inside the Great Hall of Forthingay Castle, which a Great Hall is usually where people have like dinner celebrations. So what a juxtaposed use for that room.
Celebration, death.
Yeah. She walks to the scaffolding and she's accompanied by her ladies. So she was like, hey, Mary. And they're like, yeah, Mary. And she's like, Mary. We ready, Mary? We're ready.
We good.
The Marys are ready. She was cool as a fucking cucumber.
Yeah, they were like, just chilling. They helping her remove her clothing.
She had been prepping for this. She known for 20 years that this was coming.
She knew that this day was going to happen. And she asked if the priest would be permitted to be with her on the scaffold. And they told her, nope.
No way, Jose.
You ain't going to do it. And they literally step her up onto the chopping block area and rip off her clothes. And what is she wearing, girl? Big red.
She's wearing big red. She's wearing a red dressing dress underneath it,
which is the color of Catholic martyrdom. So
it's the color of martyrdom's period. Because remember,
try to say that drunk martyrdom.
Because remember, Anne Boleyn also wore a red petticoat.
Yep.
And she considered herself a martyr for Protestantism. Yeah.
So it was like
another word to say. Hard to say, drunk. Protestantism. So she kissed each one of her ladies and then knelt down and she was blindfolded.
God, this execution story just like heartstrings are all over.
This execution went so bad.
Botched.
It's an interesting discussion on if the executioner was nervous, inexperienced, or wanted it to be bad for her.
So the first blow to the back of her neck really didn't...
It kind of more like hit the back of her head, and people could see her mouthing the words, sweet Jesus, when it happened.
Because not only do they like hit the back of her head and she's like, sweet Jesus, the second chop doesn't quite go all the way through. Oh my God.
The third blow goes through her neck, but and she's probably dead at this point, but it doesn't completely sever it. So they have to like saw the rest of her head off. Then after her head was finally severed, the executioner goes and lifts up her head to say, "God save the queen."
And then her wig falls off.
So all her hair had fallen out from the stress. She's only 42. She was only 42 at the time of her execution. But so her head falls to the ground. And that was the last moments in the life of Mary Queen of Scots. Aftermath. All of Mary's clothes, the crosses that she brought with her, the necklaces she was wearing, the jewels on her fingers, they were burnt. All of the blood that like seeped from her neck was like everybody had to get out before anybody had a chance to do anything, and so it was cleaned, because it was a common thing at the time for people to go dip a handkerchief in the blood of a martyr and say, "Hey, I have a holy relic." So they didn't want anybody to steal a part of her dress, steal her wig, steal one of her crucifixes, anything to say, "I have a relic of a martyr." So like as soon as she was dead, it was like, everybody out. And so they stripped all her clothes, everything that had any of her blood on it was cleaned or burnt. And she was buried in a lead coffin in like a rando church in England. Word gets to Elizabeth that Mary has been beheaded. And this bitch is bananas. Bananas. She loses her fucking mind. She's like, "I didn't tell you to execute her." And so
I genuinely believe Elizabeth may have not wanted this to happen.
I definitely, the only reason, because people can swing it both ways.
Maybe Elizabeth was trying to be like, "Oh, I didn't know." Like we were saying, the culpable deniability or whatever. Like you can deny it.
But I've read several accounts where it's like people who were like didn't have skin in the game, like ambassadors from other countries that were like, "She is so mad. I think somebody's about to get executed for this execution." So I legitimately think Elizabeth had signed the death warrant as a threat to Mary to be like, "Fuck up one more time and see what happens." But her lords took it upon themselves
to just do it.
Yeah. Because this was pre-social media, pre-email. She couldn't keep eyes on everything that was happening at every castle.
Those English thug lords.
Oh, the English thug lords.
English.
So, Mary had requested to be buried in France next to Francis. Aww.
That was her first love. So
it's her only husband that she
still
liked.
Yeah.
She hated both of her other husbands, so it's her only husband that she liked.
But the bitches put her in England instead of France.
But later on, and just like some rando English burial site too, but later on her son would bury her at Westminster Abbey. So let's discuss her legacy, because like her life, it's a doozy. She's gone down as the most famous monarch from Scotland ever.
And she is a very famous monarch in England too.
She's just a famous monarch, period.
So her legacy, what happened to her son? Her son ended up running England and Scotland. So have you ever heard of the King James Bible?
Have you ever heard of the United Kingdom?
It's all named after him.
Yeah.
So she has a pretty formidable
legacy.
Yeah.
The royal family today are direct descendants
from the Stuarts.
Not Elizabeth, not the Tudors. The Stuarts. Yeah.
So they are literally we are still living in the land of Mary Queen of Scots.
Well, we're not, because we're in America.
But
cheers.
Cheers
to
with
Mary
my big red.
And my Merlot. So, thanks for listening. If there's something you want to hear, just hit us up.
You can email us at queenshistorypodcast@gmail.com.
Find us on Twitter. We're at queens_podcast. We're on SoundCloud and Stitcher.
And follow us on iTunes at Queens Podcast, all one word.
All smushed up. Queens Podcast. Follow us on Facebook.
Thanks, guys, for listening.
Cheers.
Bye, girl.
Clink, clink. Mwah.